It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Appreciate you being here. Eric and Gary, they will return next Sunday night, Monday morning, and I got to tell you, this is one of those days where I've got so much. And as the music was playing, I was thinking, where do I even start with the news cycle today? Now, we've got Cringe Jean. By the way, I call Cringe Jean-Pierre. I call her Cringe. And because everything that she says is cringy. So I just call her out of not so affectionately Cringe Jean-Pierre. But she had her first press conference in front of the White House press corps since the debate. So I do have that story for you. I've got some great audio as well. We have polling out that shows that Donald Trump is now winning and rather decisively winning the battleground states since the debate. Joe Biden is losing ground big time. The Democrats are becoming more and more vocal about the fact that they want Joe Biden to step aside. We've got reporting from the New York Times. We've got reporting from Carl Bernstein about what is going on behind the scenes at the White House. And there's just a lot going on. Oh, and the guy that came up with the gold standard as far as cognitive tests goes, the guy that came up with the gold standard, he is now saying he would be willing to administer himself the cognitive test that clearly Joe Biden needs. And so we'll talk about that and a whole lot more straight ahead. And by the way, some Joe Biden has dementia news as well. It is a very busy news day, so let's get to it. By the way, my name again is Dan Mandis, and you can find out more about me on my social media pages. You can find me at Dan Mandis Show on Twitter, Facebook as well. I'm on Instagram. You can find me at all of those places. I, by the way, host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. You can listen to that 6 to 10 Eastern Time at 99.7WTN.com. You can also view the radio show on Facebook and YouTube as well. So, Corinne Jean-Pierre, she did have her first press conference. I want to play you some of this audio. Clearly, the media, and we talked about this the last couple of nights as I fill in for Gary and Eric, the media realizes that the American people understand that the media has been covering for Joe Biden for the better part of a year. And we'll get into more of that as the evening progresses. But I want to play you some of this audio from the White House press briefing earlier today, where she was asked, obviously, about the debate.
Well, what I can tell you is that he had a cold and a bad night. I would not see this as an episode. I would see this as what it was and what we believe it to be, which is it was a bad night. And he did, on top of that, he had a cold. And that is the reality of the situation. That is the reality of what happened that night.
So there's a number of things that are going on. Obviously, you just heard that the White House and Nancy Pelosi and a lot of these other folks, they are admitting that Joe Biden had a bad night on that Thursday. They're admitting it. They're saying that, yes, he had a bad night. He also had a cold. And by the way, Joe Biden out there also in the news today is that the president has now been telling supporters at some sort of a fundraiser that it was the travel that killed him. And he basically, one of the things that he said was that he almost fell asleep on stage and that he should not have taken those 2 trips to Europe. Here's the problem. The problem is that the timeline doesn't add up. We'll get into that as well straight ahead. But again, you can tell that they are admitting that this was not a good night for Joe Biden. In the press, inside the White House briefing today, they were rather relentless. Listen to this.
You've certainly seen the reporting out there that this is not just a standalone instance, that other people are saying that this has happened before. One, do you see these as legitimate questions? And also, are you being straight with the American people on this?
I see it as a legitimate question. I do.
I love that the reporter asked Corinne Jean-Pierre, are you being straight with the American people? Because it's obvious that they're not. They've not been straight with the American people for a long time. That's the reporting of the New York Times, the reporting of Carl Bernstein as well. I'll remind you, and I played this at the tail end of the program last night, where Carl Bernstein, of Woodward and Bernstein fame and Watergate, he has been reporting, and I've got the audio for you, but he's been out there telling folks that his sources inside the White House have been saying that this has been going on for quite some time. Joe Biden has been listless. He's been halting inside the White House. He has been almost falling asleep. He can't really keep a train of thought going when he's in meetings. That is what Carl Bernstein has been saying, and that's what other media outlets have been saying now as well. In other words, what seems to be happening here, as the media is asking Cringe Jean-Pierre if she's being straight with the American people, it's almost like there's a dog pile going on right now. There's a dog pile in the sense that you have all of these reporters and folks that are in office, Democrats that are in office, that are also saying that Joe Biden is dragging us down. So now it really is a dog pile on the Biden administration. And the reporter there in the White House press briefing asking Karine Jean-Pierre if she's being straight with the American people. Well, the reason why that is a relevant question is because we know that this White House has not always been and rarely is straight with the American people. Joe Biden, of course, everyone knows he has a penchant for lying. Here's the answer to that question, by the way.
And I have said it is a fair question to ask. The president sees it as a legitimate question. And I think also the president saying, I am not a young man. I'm not as a smooth talker as I used to be. I don't walk as easily as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. I mean, the president is admitting and saying, and this is not the first time, right? He's talked about his age. He's joked about his age many times before. And so you heard that directly from, and we are acknowledging what people are seeing. But we do believe this was in this instance, it was a bad night.
Is he disabled?
No, and let me finish with your colleague, please. And I know, but shouting out, come on, you know better. Come on.
Just one final question.
So clearly, number one, I don't think that she liked the question when somebody asks, "Are you disabled?" or "Is the president disabled?" And so she didn't like that question. She also didn't like the question. One brave soul tiptoed into this question about whether or not Joe Biden had some sort of a degenerative condition. Listen to this.
I'm going to ask something delicate, and you may not like it. The president may not like to hear it if he's watching, but I think the American people need to get a yes or no answer on this. Does President Biden, at 81 years old, have Alzheimer's, any form of dementia, or degenerative illness? And it's a yes or no question. And if you don't know, why don't you, as one of his senior staff members, know?
I have an answer for you. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
It's a no. And I hope you're asking the other guy the same exact question.
Wow. She didn't like that question, but here's the thing. This is what the American people want to know. This is what the American people want to know. And this is why the president needs to agree to a cognitive test. This is why. And so for Karine Jean-Pierre to get huffy and irritated and angry and defensive about somebody actually having the gall to ask that question, well, I hate to break it to you, Cringe, but this is what the American people want to know. Does Joe Biden have some sort of dementia? Does he have some sort of Alzheimer's? Because that's what everybody is saying. And for this reporter to tiptoe into this conversation, for this reporter to say, well, I hate to ask this, and you're going to get mad, and maybe Joe Biden's going to get mad if he's watching. Ask the question, dude. Ask the question, because everybody believes that this president does have dementia. People believe that this president does have Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. That's another thing that's out there. People are saying that the stiffness, the freezing up that Joe Biden is experiencing, that we're all seeing, says that that's a sign that he's got Parkinson's. I don't know. But people that have had relatives that have Parkinson's, they do say that that stiffening up is a sign of Parkinson's. And so that's going to be one of the questions. And so then the question, of course, becomes, because if she gets all testy and defensive when somebody asks, does the president have dementia or Alzheimer's? Well, then if you're so defensive about it, if you are so pointed about the response, which is no, well, then why don't you put up or shut up? Why doesn't the president take a cognitive test? Here's what she said.
Relates to, something like a cognitive test, to the question that you're asking me about what the speaker, former speaker said. Obviously, she can speak for herself. His team, who has said, the medical team said it is not warranted in this case. We have put forward a thorough, transparent annual report on his health. So they have said that is not warranted. It is not necessary. Again, we understand. We understand.
All right. So, number one, she was referring to Nancy Pelosi, who gave just an absolutely mind-bending, mind-numbing interview with Andrea Mitchell about the president. And when I say mind-bending, I cut up some audio, and it was difficult for me to do because it's difficult to get anything that is relevant out of Nancy Pelosi. But I did, for you folks, because, I watched it so that you didn't have to. I've got the relevant audio. But a couple of things. Number one, Corinne Jean-Pierre said that when the reporter asked if the president has Alzheimer's or dementia, she had an emphatic and defensive no. And then she said, I hope you're asking the other guy this same question. Well, listen. Number one, the other guy, i.e. Donald Trump, he has agreed and he has actually taken that cognitive test, and they say that he passed with flying colors. Number two, when she says that Joe Biden's medical team says that this cognitive test is not warranted, I would beg to differ. And literally, I would say to Corinne Jean-Pierre, the entire world differs with you on whether or not the president should take a cognitive test. It is clearly warranted. And the way that I would say it, because she says, well, his medical team says that it's not warranted. Well, I don't know. Did the medical team watch the debate? Did Joe Biden's medical team watch the debate, or have they been watching him on stage or as he's at the podium, when he's giving speeches, when he's actually answering questions and so forth? And you've seen him lose his train of thought. You've seen him garble the names of some of the people that work for him. He couldn't say Alejandro Mayorkas' name a couple of weeks ago. That was one of those now more infamous incidents. So that's number one. Number two, she said that the White House has been transparent with Joe Biden's medical records and so forth. Well, they really haven't, because they've released some of the results from his physical, but we haven't been able to hear from the doctors. The White House press corps has not been able to ask the doctors of Joe Biden any kind of a question. And so clearly, I would say that, yeah, the American people and the world would disagree with Corinne Jean-Pierre when she says that a cognitive test for Joe Biden is not warranted. Clearly it is. You know who says that there is a need and a necessity for Joe Biden to take a cognitive test? The guy that came up with the cognitive test. Yes. His name is Dr. Ziad Nesreddin, and this is the guy that came up with the gold standard cognitive test. He is now saying, after that interview and after that debate, that Joe Biden does need to take his cognitive test. I'll tell you what he had to say coming up next. The phone number is 866-90-RED-I, 866-907-3339. And for Eric and Gary, my name is Dan Mandis. This is Red Eye Radio.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. On a hot summer day, the last thing you want to feel is a blast of warm air when you turn on your air conditioning. A malfunctioning AC system will leave you uncomfortably shifting in your seat. Not to mention, it can affect the safety and performance of your entire vehicle and your productivity. When issues with your AC system begin to occur internally, your truck will give you some warning signs. Those include a noisy compressor and a lack of water dripping from the cab drain tube while your AC is running. If you experience either of these warning signs, you should have your AC system inspected by a professional technician immediately. Listen to your truck and invest the time now to avoid spending more time in the shop later on.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Eric and Gary. Just a reminder, as we wrapped up the last segment, I played you this piece of audio from Cringe Jean-Pierre.
Relates to, something like a cognitive test, to the question that you're asking me about what the speaker, former speaker said. Obviously, she can speak for herself. His team, who has said, the medical team said it is not warranted in this case. We have put forward a thorough, transparent annual report on his health. So they have said that is not warranted. It is not necessary. Again, we understand. We understand.
So Nancy Pelosi, in this interview, and I've got some audio for it, she also said that, questions about Biden's age are understandable. Dr. Ziad Nasruddin, he is the guy who invented the cognitive test, the gold standard, they say. And he says that, Biden needs to take this test and he would be the guy to do it. He has been reluctant. This is from the New York Post. Dr. Ziad Nasruddin has been reluctant to comment about the president's health despite widespread concerns about the 81-year-old's slurring, stiffness, and freezing episodes during his time in the White House. But Dr. Nasruddin, after watching the debate last Thursday, does now say that he does have serious concerns about Joe Biden's mental acuity. After watching his performance against Donald Trump, Dr. Nasruddin invented the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, or MOCA test, M-O-C-A test. You'll probably know it best as the test that Donald Trump, 78 years old, often brags about acing during his presidency. It includes asking patients to identify pictures of animals, repeat a list of numbers and words, or complete a pattern. The lower the score, the higher the risk of cognitive decline, a precursor for dementia. Dr. Nasruddin, who is based in Montreal, Canada, said a neurological evaluation for the president is warranted to rule out neurodegenerative symptoms. Shortly after Biden began debating Trump last week, his team claimed that the president was suffering a cold in an attempt to explain his shaky voice, pallid skin, and meandering answers. Did anybody notice, by the way, that Joe Biden looked orange the other night? I totally and completely missed that last night there was trending after Biden came out and started talking about the Donald Trump decision by the Supreme Court, that he looked orange. People are saying online that he looked orange. I completely missed that, but that was a big deal. And then when I actually looked at the video, he was orange. And so I don't know if he had a spray tan going on or what, but he did. He looked very pale during the debate. So I think that they decided to go ahead and spray tan him. But Dr. Nasruddin says that President Biden's symptoms of slurred speech, confusion, stiffness, and freezing episodes were present a long while before the debate. He says it's unlikely that this was caused only by the flu or sedative medication to fight it. He said during the debate, I saw a lot of trouble answering questions, freezing, not completing sentences, mumbling, and sometimes saying something that doesn't make any sense. And he says that he thought while he's watching the debate, my God, this is exactly what has been going on for a few months, many months. He says, I suspect probably a bit longer. He says this is concerning and shows that he should get a cognitive test.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
Appreciate you listening to Red Eye Radio, and the phone number remains 866-90-RED-EYE. Headline from the Associated Press: Judge delays Trump's hush money sentencing until at least September, if ever. They may not even, according to a lot of reporting today, they may not ever have a ruling in that case, a sentencing in the hush money case, because of the Supreme Court's immunity ruling. This is what they say from the Associated Press. In a major reprieve for former President Donald Trump, sentencing for his hush money convictions was postponed until at least September, if ever, as the judge agreed to weigh the possible impact of a new Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity. We talked about that at great length last night. Trump had been scheduled, as you folks know, to face sentencing July 11th, just before the Republicans' nominating convention on his New York convictions on felony charges of falsifying business records. He, of course, denies any wrongdoing. The postponement sets the sentencing for September 18th at the earliest, if it happens at all, they say, since Donald Trump's lawyers are arguing that the Supreme Court ruling merits not only delaying the sentencing, but tossing out his conviction. They say the impact of the immunity ruling is a loud and clear signal for justice in the United States. Trump crowed, they say, on his Truth social media platform after the sentencing was delayed. They say there is no immediate comment on the sentencing postponement from Manhattan prosecutors who brought the hush money case. I think they're just trying to figure out, and it does say so in this story from the Associated Press, they're trying to figure out how the immunity ruling by the Supreme Court would impact the hush money case. And so, but here's the deal, is that just the fact that Judge Merchan, and if you have been following that story, and I know that you probably have because you listen to Gary and Eric and Red Eye Radio, you know that Judge Merchan was very anti-Donald Trump. That was not just a talking point for Donald Trump. That was the facts. I mean, Merchan, you know the story, no doubt. He had donated to Democrats. His daughter is a Democrat strategist who makes a lot of money from the Democrat Party. So, you know, this was a judge who definitely had a conflict of interest. And I don't really want to get into the whole hush money thing, except just to tell you that this is yet another victory for Donald Trump. And so every time the former president turns around, there is another victory. And part of me wonders if the American people, namely the independents out there, who, you know, maybe they're not as in tune to the news as maybe you are because you listen to talk radio, but they do notice that there have been a lot of legal setbacks for the folks who are anti-Donald Trump. I mean, you can talk about what happened in Georgia, in Fulton County with Fani Willis and how, you know, that whole thing was a complete and utter train wreck because clearly, at least if you ask me, Fani Willis, the prosecutor in that case, incredibly corrupt, the district attorney in that case in Georgia. We also know that there have been many other setbacks for the Democrats. They tried to knock him off of the ballot in various states because of January 6th. That as well, all of those were knocked down. So every time you turn around, Donald Trump is getting yet another legal victory. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-RED-EYE. I want to say hello to, this is Brody in Pennsylvania. Thanks for calling Red Eye Radio. Hey, Brody.
Hi, I'm calling from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it's such an honor to talk to the show. I just want to say very briefly that you were on the air over here, Red Eye Radio, which we really enjoyed here in the Steel City. Mm-hmm. And George Soros bought Katie, something to do with Odyssey, and took Red Eye Radio off the airways. I have to listen to it on the app because they put some kind of flaky people just laughing about Donald Trump, thinking that he's going to go to jail. So they have no ratings at all. So it's just an honor to be here.
Well, thank you.
It is. And I just wanted to say, the question that I would like to talk to the, you know, maybe, and it's really nice that you're taking calls. Now that this decision happened, how is this not going to be able to happen in the future where we put our political enemies behind bars? Like, the left has gone, completely haywire. The cast of The View, Joyless Bear, whoever this Williams lady, I don't even know who she is, but she just keeps saying, for real, like, I'm out. Is she going to go? Could she go to Mexico or something?
Or is that you talking about
the country?
You're talking about Joy Reid from last night.
Yeah, Joyless Reid, but that's already taken the name of Joyless Bear.
Behar, right?
The Hulu people, and I just want to know, like, the American people are wise to this now, and they're all listening. But the thing is, I'm telling you right now that I hope this doesn't happen in the future. Donald Trump is going to be president. Okay, the American people are tired of the fake news, the fake media, the fake everything. Fauci. Biden inherited a really good economy, and this is an ultimate setback for America, having him almost ruining America for gas prices. How do you think that this is, and especially, did you see all that stuff you were talking about the case? That wasn't even a fair trial. You just said before I came on that the judge in that case, and I don't know what his name is at my fingertips, but I know
Marchand.
The whole time he was, yeah, exactly. And he didn't handle it fairly at all. And these people are going to have repercussions because Donald Trump is like, don't worry, I'm not going to come after them. You know very well that he is.
Well,
here's
hey, Brody, here's what I would say, and I do appreciate the call, and I appreciate the kind words. Judge Juan Marchand, I mentioned before the break that he is extremely conflicted, so that's number one. I don't know what Donald Trump is going to do. We talk about, and it's always a constant conversation within the media with the Trump haters. Oh, he's going to, go after his political enemies. He's going to go after, these folks in some sort of a revenge or retribution tour. And Trump, some days he'll say, some things like that. Maybe he'll talk about whatever his whoever his political enemies are. He may say something to that effect about revenge and all those kinds of things. But other times he'll say that no, the best revenge is success. That is what Donald Trump has said multiple times. And he said that, I don't have the audio handy, but I remember when he said to Sean Hannity, Hannity asked him specifically a couple of different times. He said, are you going to go for revenge if you end up in the Oval Office a second time? And are you going to go on a revenge tour? And Donald Trump specifically said, and Hannity asked him a follow-up question too, and Trump's response was, the best revenge is our success. The best revenge will be our success. And, I don't know what Donald Trump is going to do. I think that he does have to clean up the swamp. I think that if there are people within the swamp who perhaps within the DOJ that clearly they go after people for their political beliefs and their political party as opposed to, simply doing their jobs in an unbiased way, those people do need to go. But he can pick, whoever his attorney general is if he gets back into office. But the bottom line is I believe that Donald Trump will spend, if he ends up back in office, I believe that Donald Trump will do whatever he can to fix America. That is going to be, let me tell you something, friend, that is going to be a full-time job for the president. If there's some people within the swamp that need to be purged, then he'll do that if that is going to be within his purview. But for me, I think the president needs to focus on if Donald Trump ends up president again, I think that he needs to focus on the border. He needs to focus on the economy. He needs to start stripping away all of those regulations again. He needs to get the fentanyl from China. He needs to stop that fentanyl from coming across our southern border as well. He needs to protect our infrastructure. That's what President Trump, if there is a second term, needs to focus on. And Brody, I very much appreciate your call. This is Jonathan in Texas. Jonathan, thanks for calling Red Eye Radio. Go ahead.
Hey, my question goes to Biden's mental acuity. If he's not with it, and I believe he's not, wouldn't it be a criminal offense for those that are controlling him because they're using his power to manipulate the country.
Right.
You know, like in Texas, if there's a senior that has dementia and you use her bank account and she doesn't know what she's doing, that's a crime. And classified as elderly abuse. And then Kamala Harris being the VP, isn't she breaking her oath of office by not invoking the 25th Amendment, knowing that he is incapacitated?
All right, a couple of things, Jonathan, and I appreciate the call. I'll go ahead and answer the questions. Number one, I don't know if any laws are being broken. You would have to absolutely prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that somebody else is literally pulling the strings. And, you know, all presidents have advisors. So I believe that other people clearly are running the show within the Biden administration. And it's easy to basically pull strings and tell President Biden what he is ultimately supposed to be doing. And so I don't know how you prove that. The other thing is who would be running the show? Well, the Biden administration is full of former Obama employees and former Obama staffers. And so I very much believe that there is a Democrat stronghold of former Obama officials. And, you know, it's a whole clique in Washington, D.C. And I do believe that Barack Obama and, his inside circle, you got Valerie Jarrett and some of these other folks, I believe that those are the people who are running the show. Obama has said, and I know that some of you people are screaming at the radio now, Mandis, talk about how Obama one time said that he wanted to, sit downstairs in a basement in his sweatpants and, run the world, but he didn't have to do all of the ceremonial stuff. He just said, if I could do that, if I could have somebody else do all of the ceremonial stuff and I could just, sit in my basement in sweatpants and run the world, I would love to do that. Well, that is what he's doing, in my opinion. By the way, did you see this? Headline. This is from Daily Mail. The only Democrat who could beat Donald Trump, and this particular person has not been out campaigning for Joe Biden, is, say it with me, ladies and gentlemen, Michelle Obama. I have been telling you folks this for a long time. Michelle Obama, according to the polling, the former First Lady of the United States currently polls with a massive 50 to 39% lead over former President Donald Trump. Now, as I said last night, because I think this came up last night, that Michelle Obama, she's never held public office, and so it's really easy to campaign without a record. It's really easy to say, look what he's done, look what he's done, look what he's done, talking about Donald Trump. And the reality is that Michelle Obama, she's never had to run a campaign before, and she's never had to make decisions before. Bottom line is that whole healthy lunch thing, that was a complete and utter disaster. But it's easy to run when you don't have a record. And so if Joe Biden drops out and that cabal that I was just talking about convinces Michelle Obama that she has to run for the good of America, to save democracy. And then she comes in, well, she doesn't have a record to run on. You can't blame her for the border catastrophe. You can't blame her for inflation going up to over 9%. You can't blame her for, anything that Joe Biden has done because she officially had nothing to do with it. And I think for a lot of Republicans, that actually is our big worry, is that Michelle Obama will decide to run. We talk about Pete Buttigieg, we talk about Kamala Harris, we talk about Wes Moore, we speak about Gavin Newsom. Joe Biden, if he dropped out, any of those names jump in, I believe that Donald Trump, and according to the polling, he would beat all of those folks handedly. There's one person, Michelle Obama, that could possibly give Donald Trump a run for his money. 866-90 Red Eye. We'll return next.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
Red Eye Radio. The phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. My name is Dan Mandis, in for Eric and Gary. You can find out more about me on the Dan Mandis Show Facebook page. I am also on Twitter or X, both of those at Dan Mandis Show. By the way, the intrigue about Michelle Obama, they talk a lot about how she has never run for public office before. I was telling you just before the previous commercial break that she would poll with a massive 50-39 lead over former President Donald Trump. There is more to this story. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more straight ahead. My name is Dan Mandis. This is Red Eye Radio.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis. This is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Have no fear, Gary and Eric, they will return next Sunday night, Monday morning. I host a morning radio show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN in Nashville, Tennessee. You can find out more about me on the socials at Dan Mandis Show, particularly on Facebook and also Twitter. Now, here's the conversation in the previous hour. If you're just joining us, we're talking about Michelle Obama. Big headline in the Daily Mail reports that there's only one candidate, just one, that could even come close to beating Donald Trump. That is, of course, Michelle Obama, the former First Lady of the United States, currently polling with a massive 50-39% lead over former President Donald Trump. Now, the obvious reason that is because everybody likes Michelle Obama. The reason why everybody likes Michelle Obama is because she's never had to make political decisions. That is why. So everybody's talking about who could be a replacement for Joe Biden. What will the Democrat Party be doing? There's a lot of news out there today about what is happening behind the scenes. And part of what's going on is slowly but surely we do see more and more Democrats coming out, and particularly in the House of Representatives, and they're saying that Joe Biden is going to be a drag as November comes closer. Because, you know, when you have a candidate at the top of the ticket, like, for example, Joe Biden, and people are not excited about the candidate at the top of the ticket, people may not come out and vote at all in the local elections. So if I'm a Democrat and I'm in the House of Representatives and I'm up for re-election and they are up for re-election every 2 years, then Biden is going to be, you know, a drain for the Democrat Party because they could lose the House big time. The Democrats could. Now, the Republicans already have the majority in the House, but it could get even worse for the Democrats if Biden is still at the top of the ticket. And so that's why we're seeing people like, for example, Sheldon Whitehouse, who is a senator. He was talking about this earlier today. He is saying that Biden is going to be a drag on the Democrat Party if he stays in office.
Your honest reaction to the debate?
I think, like a lot of people, I was pretty horrified. I think people want to make sure that this is a campaign that's ready to go and win, that the president and his team are being candid with us about his condition, that this was a real anomaly and not just the way he is these days.
So that's going to be the question. Simon Atiba tweeted this out, and this goes along with what I was talking about. House Democrats are in revolt. House Democrats meeting just devolved into a grievance session about President Joe Biden, exposing growing frustration in Congress. Members are derisively calling Joe Biden the donkey in the room. with Representative Lloyd Doggett, a Democrat out of Texas, urging Joe Biden to withdraw from the race. Some are demanding a change in campaign advisors. Others wanted Joe Biden to step aside, despite House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries giving Joe Biden public support. The president has not contacted Hakeem Jeffries. And I would think that that's pretty important. Democratic leadership is not stopping the public criticism. So you've got Sheldon Whitehouse, again, a senator, who is coming out against Joe Biden. Now you have Sheldon Whitehouse. You've got others that are coming after the president as well. Making news tonight is this mind-bending interview with Nancy Pelosi. Now, you know, she used to be the speaker, and she was on with Andrea Mitchell, and I think this was on MSNBC. First question, the Democrats have not heard from Joe Biden or his team. How is that even possible? Listen to what Nancy Pelosi says.
No, I haven't spoken to him since the debate, but I have spoken to him regularly. And every time he has been on the top of his game in terms of knowing the issues and what is at stake. But we all have been in touch with people close to the president. So it's not a question of not having an opportunity to make our concerns known or have some questions answered. But I think we have to spend a little more time viewing what is at stake in this election. Today is the 60th anniversary.
Now, she then talks for 2 minutes bashing Donald Trump. So she spent 30 seconds answering the question about Joe Biden and how has Joe Biden not contacted the leader of the Democrat Party in the House of Representatives. 30 seconds, she spoke, and then she goes on for 2 minutes talking about Donald Trump. And I've noticed that this is now a pattern for the Democrat Party, is what they're now going to do is they are acknowledging, yes, the debate was a train wreck. However, Donald Trump is the real train wreck, and Donald Trump is the one that really is and I'm going to air quote here, a threat to democracy. And she talks about the Supreme Court, presidential immunity, on and on for 2 minutes. So given all of that, Andrea Mitchell finally says, don't we as Democrats need the best candidate?
Well, let me dial back for a moment. Given your perspective and many Democrats' perspective of what is at stake, that it's an existential moment for the country, according to your perspective, if Donald Trump is elected. That would posit that you have to have the most important campaign led by the most important nominee. And do you have questions as to whether this was a one bad night or whether there is something more serious involved, and whether he needs to be more open about if he does have a medical condition, if he is slipping? Everybody knows there's an age issue, and he certainly did the opposite of reassuring people with that high risk, potentially high reward debate plan that they came up with. It backfired.
All right, so after that 2.5 minutes of filibustering by Nancy Pelosi, Andrea Mitchell finally gets the question out, and I'm going to spare you most of Nancy Pelosi's droning on and on, but she did say that the question is legit about Joe Biden's mental acuity.
I think it's a legitimate question to say, is this an episode or is this a condition? And so when people ask that question, it's completely legitimate of both candidates. Because what we saw on the other side was a line.
And then she goes on and on and on about Donald Trump. So she literally spent 15 seconds talking about how it is a legit question about Joe Biden. But then she spends the next, I kid you not, friends, 2 minutes
undo or debunk everything
talking about Donald Trump. So that's what they're doing, is they are saying, oh, yeah, you've got a legit point about Joe Biden. You've legit point about asking whether or not there are big issues with the president and his mental acuity. And they'll admit that he had an off night, and they'll say, well, he had a cold and all of these other things. But then they go into Donald Trump. And again, this interview, as I said previously, it was so incredibly mind-numbing that for me, it was just hard to watch, which is why I'm just playing you the highlights or the lowlights, including where this discussion between Nancy Pelosi and Andrea Mitchell got a little awkward.
Well, arguably, President Biden should have been prepared for the kinds of lies that he says and that we've also reported that Donald Trump says, and all the fact-checking is that there were at least 30 lies and not answering questions and pivoting back to immigration whenever he could. So there's no question about that. I'm going to,
Yeah, but there's no fact-checking in
that.
real time. There's no fact-checking in real time. And that's what the problem is.
No
I
argument
myself
there.
have never gone on a stage with him because that's who he is.
Let me just say, but President Biden should have been prepared for that. Now, we have a little bit of a satellite delay, so I apologize for that, Madam Speaker. But at this point, there's no one who knows the donor community better than you. You're the best. You're a legendary fundraiser. There's no one who knows the convention rules better than you. So I've got to ask you, what are you hearing from your large network of people about whether he is up to it?
And she never really answered the question. But, it's interesting. It's like Andrea Mitchell is trying to say, but she's afraid to say, that knowing who Donald Trump is, Biden should have been prepared. And Joe Biden was not prepared. That's what she was tiptoeing around and trying to say to Nancy Pelosi. But again, she's clearly afraid to just come out and say it. It's not that hard, Andrea Mitchell. The left knows that Donald Trump, according to them, says a lot of lies, tells a lot of tales. Now, forget about the fact that Joe Biden is perpetually lying. Forget about that for just the sake of this conversation. If you're a Democrat and you're a Democrat strategist, you believe that Donald Trump lies all the time, so Biden should have been ready for that. Joe Biden came out with the absolute most pandering, just old arguments about, Donald Trump and, he's a threat to democracy. And the polling shows that little talking point for the Democrats simply is not landing. He talked about why he got into the race because Donald Trump said that white supremacists are fine people. That has also been debunked over and over again. So it was the same old narrative that Joe Biden was trying to sell. And he does that because he doesn't really have any talking points as far as his policy goes, because he knows that he is underwater on literally everything. Now, the question about the donors, and I should complete that thought. When I say that Biden is underwater on every single issue, meaning that the polling shows that whether it's the economy, whether it is immigration, whether it is crime, you name it, Joe Biden is losing to Donald Trump on every single issue in the polling. Abortion is the only one where some polling shows that Joe Biden is ahead of Donald Trump. Now, you heard Andrea Mitchell talk about the donors. I did mention this last night. We had a story yesterday about the donor class, and they are fleeing the Democrat Party. Now, these are people who gave millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars collectively to Joe Biden and the Democrats. And now they say that they're out unless Joe Biden steps down. And so this is part of the reporting from the Hill. I feel like I have been deceived. One of these donors says Joe Biden and the people around him have been deceiving the American people. Now they say the dam has broken. We all know, and we can all see that we were lied to. Well, yes, Democrat donor. Welcome to the world of talk radio, where we've been talking about this for well over a year. And we've been dismayed that the American media, the mainstream media, did not report on the clear issues that Joe Biden was having. So she says, I am deliberately calling it a big lie because this is as big of a lie as Donald Trump's big lie. Remember, the big lie is that the election of 2020 was stolen. The Democrats will say that that is an air quote big lie. But the reality is that Joe Biden is all there cognitively. This big time Democrat fundraiser and donor says that that is a bigger lie than Donald Trump's big lie. And I've been saying that, by the way, for a long time. This guy added, referring to the former president's claims that the 2020 election was rigged. This donor says that his first choice was New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, with ex-Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo as a vice presidential pick. So Cory Booker at the top of the ticket and this Gina Raimondo as the vice presidential pick. Booker also, he says, could catch lightning in a bottle in the way that Barack Obama did in the run-up to 2008. He says he also argued that Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Maryland Governor Wes Moore would also be a match for Donald Trump this November. His comments come as pressure continues to build on the 81-year-old Joe Biden to quit the race for the White House. And, now the big question is, should Joe Biden do an interview to help him get back on track? We'll talk about that. I'll also take your calls coming up next. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Got a lot more straight ahead. This is Red Eye Radio.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Just because idling is common doesn't make it smart. Idling a diesel uses about a gallon of fuel per hour, which can cost you about $180 per week at $4.50 per gallon if your truck idles 8 hours a day. Idling easily can cost you a few thousand more in fuel alone per year, not including the added engine maintenance expense that results from excessive idling. Harder on your truck's engine than highway driving. In addition to operating costs, many governments impose no idling laws and regulations with fines as high as $25,000. Instead, there are many alternatives. An extra blanket for cold temperatures, window screens for when the weather is warm, bunk heaters, and various auxiliary power unit options abound in this day and age too, many powered just by batteries. Otherwise, diesel and gas gensets burn far less fuel than your truck's engine. Research options to find your fit. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics.
Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here in for Eric and Gary. Want to say hello to Brian calling from, I believe that's Missouri, on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Brian, how are you?
Fantastic. It's such a pleasure to talk to you, and I really enjoy your show. I work for Webster University overnight, so I work that Red Eye shift, and this is a perfect show to listen to overnight.
Well, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Go ahead.
I guess, first of all, there's a lot I want to say here. What is this existential crisis nonsense this woman, Nancy Pelosi, speaks of with Donald Trump, as though the Trump asteroid is heading towards our planet and it's just going to kill all of us if this man regains power in the White House? I just can't figure this out. My connection to this man is when I was in the Navy, I won money at his casino in Atlantic City. And that's about it. And I lost it all 2 days later at his other casino. But, the house always wins. But the thing of it is that they talk about how this man is such a threat to democracy. What am I missing here? How is he a threat to democracy?
Brian, you know what it is? It's a talking point, this existential threat to democracy. It's a vapid talking point that they like to use because they actually have no real criticisms of Donald Trump's policies, and they have no real reason to brag about Joe Biden. So they pull out this talking point.
Now, can you imagine in an alternate world, all right, let's turn this around, that debate, this thing that happened with Joe Biden happened with Donald Trump. Okay, The people on the left and the Democrats would be doing backflips over this. CNN, MSNBC, Joe Scarborough, he would just be delighted to see Trump fail like Biden did. But when Biden does it, I mean, you look at all these networks, they're like mourning. They're like somebody died or something, you know?
Well, I think there's a number of things going on with the networks. And, part of it is that they now feel like they have to report on Joe Biden's clear cognitive issues, even though they've been ignoring it for the better part of a year. And so I think that part of what's going on is they're embarrassed because really what happened last Thursday was not only clearly a negative for Joe Biden, but it was also proof that Joe Biden, the Joe Biden that we've been seeing, they're not deep fakes and, all of these other things that they've been saying about cheap fakes. This is actually real. And so they were saying even just a week prior to the debate that criticism of Joe Biden was based on these cheap fake and deep fake videos. The reality is that Joe Biden is not doing well. And so they are, in my opinion, highly embarrassed. And that's why they're kind of ticked off now, is because the Democrat Party, they're making the media look bad because the media has been partnering with them to make Biden look good and Trump look bad. And it absolutely backfired.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Always appreciate the opportunity to fill in for Gary and Eric. They return next Sunday night, Monday morning. And you can find out more about me on Twitter and also Facebook. If you would follow me on both, that would be appreciated. A couple of things real quick. Number one, it was a very bad day for Joe Biden because a number of things happened. There was reporting from, and let me pull up the audio real quick so you can hear for yourself. I played this at the tail end of last night's show, but you have now multiple outlets reporting that Joe Biden behind the scenes is an absolute mess, just an absolute mess. And so as the media, and I described this earlier, it's like a dog pile because you've got Democrats that are now openly calling for the president to resign because they feel like he'll be a drag on the down ballot elections. So if I'm a Democrat and I'm running for re-election and Joe Biden, who is supposed to be the big draw at the top of the ticket, is a complete and utter train wreck, well, then I'm worried about turnout in my district if I'm a congressperson. And so you've got congresspeople now saying that the president is going to make it more difficult for them to be reelected because nobody's excited about Joe Biden. And so now you have the Democrats, they're really worried that they're going to lose the House. Well, they currently don't have the majority in the House. They were hoping to regain the majority. The Republicans right now have a slight majority, ever so slight majority in the House. And so if Biden is at the top of the ticket, they have almost no chance of regaining the majority in the House of Representatives. It'll also impact the Senate as well. And so there's a lot going on within the party. Carl Bernstein from Woodward and Bernstein fame, he is now out there. This was a big deal earlier today, where he is saying that, and he's corroborating what the New York Times has been reporting. The New York Times has been reporting that Joe Biden is a mess behind the scenes. They're talking to people within the Biden administration, and they are saying that during meetings and, conferences where Biden is present, that he's losing focus. He's almost falling asleep. He can't really continue to have discussions because he loses his train of thought. The president, they say, is a complete and utter mess, and that is exactly what Carl Bernstein is saying.
Well, these are people, several of them, who are very close to President Biden, who love him, have supported him, have been among them are some people who have raised a lot of money for him. And they are adamant that what we saw the other night, the Joe Biden we saw, is not a one-off, that there have been 15, 20 occasions in the last year and a half when the president has appeared somewhat as he did in that horror show that we witnessed. And what's so significant is the people that this is coming from, and also how many people around the president are aware of such incidents, including some reporters, incidentally, who have witnessed some of them.
So as I said last night, okay, so Carl Bernstein from Woodward and Bernstein fame, who were those reporters? And that goes back to the previous segment that we were talking about, where the media has egg on their face. And I think that's part of why, over the last couple of days, you've seen Jake Tapper, you've seen Margaret Brennan. Both of them have been, among others, have been aggressive. When you have these Biden surrogates that go out there and they say that this is a one-off and so on and so forth, you do have now the media beginning to push back. And now Carl Bernstein is out there corroborating what the New York Times is saying, that Joe Biden is just what you saw on the debate stage is not a one-off. This is something that has been going on for quite some time.
There was a fundraiser at which he started at the podium, and then he became very stiff, according to the people there, as if it were almost a kind of rigor mortis.
This was reported allegedly in June of 2020.
This was this was a year ago almost exactly, at the old Four Seasons restaurant on Park Avenue. And he became very stiff, and a chair had to be brought for him to do the latter part of the event. I think that what these folks are saying and have been saying for a while is, yes, he's great when we see him, as we have tonight, but he also has these inexplicable moments that we're very concerned about, and you, Ron.
Yeah, he's talking about Ron Klain, who is the one that was spearheading the, whatever it was, 6, 7, 8, 9 days that President Biden prepared for that debate. And Ron Klain is a longtime Biden operative who was helping the president prepare for the debate. But as we all know, that debate ended in a train wreck.
Say that in the last 6 months particularly, there has been a marked incidence of cognitive decline and physical infirmity.
What I wonder about is the people who were, working with him at Camp David, allegedly in this intensive debate prep, if there were concerns there about this, and I don't know if you have got any word about that, but how anybody involved in that debate prep, didn't anybody see something?
The debate prep was supervised by Ron Klain, who has been with President Biden for many years. Mm-hmm. And people I've talked to have all been to Ron Klain in the last year to say, we have a problem.
Yeah, and there's reporting out there today that also says that Joe Biden, during that debate prep, he was a complete and utter mess during the prep. So they knew that the president was not going to do well in this debate. They knew that he was going to suffer some challenges, but they had no choice. Once they agreed to the debate, they knew that they had to go through with it.
I have heard for 2 years how sharp Joe Biden is in his national security meetings. He has special briefing books on Ukraine, on the situation in Gaza, that go down into very detailed military reports. He has an absolute command of the facts. He's sharp as can be. You see the evidence of his being the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate, of his work as vice president on foreign relations. So we're clearly dealing with two sets of one person. But this is a problem that's not going to go away unless it's explicable. Does this mean doctors' reports? Obviously it'd be great if we could have real doctors' reports from both candidates. Well, that's not going to happen.
No, it's it's not going to happen. And so, you've got there's so much reporting out there today, and I don't mean to belabor the point, but it is clear that for the Biden administration and the Biden campaign, they are spinning out of control. And when you talk about what they can do, what can they do right now to fix the narrative? One of the big questions has been, how does Joe Biden get back out in front of the American people in a credible way? Now, when I say that, I mean he has to go out and he has to answer some questions. He has to face head on the accusations that he is no longer able to do the things that he used to do, like answer questions, like debate, the American people believe, and the polling is all out there that shows that the American people are incredibly cynical, that Joe Biden is mentally able to do his job. The question was posed to Nancy Pelosi. Maybe what he needs to do is he needs to do some sort of an interview.
To show the doubters right now that he can do an interview, he can do a news conference, a town hall meeting, that he has to do something off of the teleprompter.
Absolutely, positively, you're so right. I think my recommendation to is for him to have some interviews with serious journalists, you among them, a serious journalist, no holds barred, any questions fair, and just sit there and be Joe.
All right, so that is Nancy Pelosi speaking to Andrea Mitchell, and that was the topic about how does Biden get that credibility back? Does he do some sort of an interview? Well, that interview has now been arranged, and it's an interview, I'm going to tell you, is not going to do what the Democrats are hoping that it'll do. Joe Biden has booked an interview with none other than Clinton strategist George Stephanopoulos. That's right. And it's not a live interview. It's a taped interview. So if you look online, you will see that there have been interviews between Stephanopoulos and Biden in years past. They are layup questions. They are softballs, and they are edited to make Joe Biden look good. And I'm just going to tell you that this is not going to be the interview where the American people are going to say, oh, okay, sure, our president's okay. Nice try, Democrats. I think that is what we call a swing and a miss. Jeff is on the line 2. Jeff, thanks for calling Red Eye Radio. Go ahead.
Hey, first time.
All right, thanks, man. Go ahead.
Okay, so what I saw, I think it was a Charlie Kirk tweet, was that we really have nothing to worry about in terms of replacement because as of even yesterday, there's like 2 or 3 states that are already out of contention because I think one of them was Minnesota, second one was Arizona, I forget the third one. But due to their constitution and their laws about the election, they can't change the candidate. There's no legal way to change the candidate unless the candidate died. They can't just fork over the whatever they want to do. The superdelegates have no bearing on it. It's the actual state's constitution that they can't replace the candidate after 72 days. Some are 68 days. Some are 53 days. And every single day, another state or two is like getting closer and closer to being cut off. There's also the ballot printing thing where they have to have minimum date of where the ballots need to be printed with a name on it. They can't just redo that legally. So that's something that no one's really taking into account. I saw another thing talking about the Charlie Kirk tweet. I haven't looked it up myself, but they showed the tweet on the screen. So I would just look into that. But that's our biggest thing that no one's mentioning. It's laws that are already on the books. They can't. I mean, he's already losing Ohio, right, because he's not on the ballot there. Mm-hmm. Indiana's another one of the states that's coming up. Within a week or two, there's like 8 more states. So that means that Michelle Obama got switched in tomorrow. That she would be handicapped. She'd be handicapped 8 states. I will look up. I actually follow Charlie on Twitter, so I'm surprised that I missed that. But I appreciate the call and great intel, Jeff. One of the things that they're talking about is that Joe Biden, and I talked about this last night, is that it really is, for all intents and purposes, unless Joe Biden himself decides to step out and tell the American people, it's obvious that the American people have lost faith in me, and so I'm going to step aside. I'm going to give my delegates to Michelle Obama or whoever it might be. But even that, as you say, perhaps on the local level, there might be some challenges. I know that there's going to be a lot of issues related to deadlines and can you just give your delegates from, Joe Biden to some other candidate? What happens on the local end of things? There's a lot of questions. And right now, I mean, obviously, Joe Biden has obviously won his primary. We talked about that last night. And so there's some people that are saying, well, this would be the Democrats' version of an insurrection because their party voted for Joe Biden, and that's who the party. I mean, there's a lot of folks that still want Joe Biden to remain the nominee. So if the Democrat Party wants to be known as election deniers and insurrectionists, go ahead.
replace Joe Biden. And by the way, here's the thing. When you look at the fact that we have known for a long time that Joe Biden has issues. We've known this for a long time. It wasn't until they threw him out there for this debate with Donald Trump that they made it a national issue, where the Democrats have now finally acknowledged there are problems. And so there's a lot going on with this conversation. And again, I appreciate the intel. It's 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Eric and Gary. This is Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. You know, political pundits will tell you that once you've lost the Wacka Flocka Flame support, then you're done for. This was apparently last night. That is Grammy-nominated rapper Wacka Flocka Flame, and he is apparently under a lot of fire after kicking Joe Biden supporters out of his show. Flocka stated that all the Joe Biden supporters, he says, get out. We gonna party right now for T24. Obviously, Trump 24. Many viewers claim that he has become a sellout and are disappointed in him. But you know what? I mean, all these rappers that have been coming out for Donald Trump, including Wacka Flocka Flame, this is becoming a very big deal because there's been a lot made about black supporters, black voters, and they're leaving, especially the young black males, leaving the Democrat Party, leaving Joe Biden, and going over to Republicans, and specifically Donald Trump.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis. This is Red Eye Radio.
Thank you very much for listening. It's 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. You can find out more about me on the socials. Follow me if you would, at Dan Mandis Show on both Facebook and Twitter as well. There is a lot going on, and most of it has to do with Joe Biden and will he or won't he? Will he or won't he be the nominee for the Democrats in the days and weeks and months ahead? So there's a ton of reporting that is going on. I think that there's a number of things that are happening. Number one, and I just played you a piece of audio. If you're just joining us, I mean, this is kind of funny. And the reason why I find it funny is really because it's sort of indicative of what is going on with the Biden administration, because, you know, these days they just can't win for losing. This is Wacka Flocka Flame, and apparently he is a Grammy-winning rapper. And this is what he said at a concert.
All my Joe Biden voters to get out. We're gonna party right now for our President T24, man. It's about party.
So what he said is, Joe Biden supporters, see ya, get out. He literally told Joe Biden supporters to get out. We're going to party for T24. That's what he said. The audio is not great, but I mean, you can hear it pretty well. Now, I'm going to say this. As a guy who is no fan of Joe Biden, as a guy who can't even fathom why anybody would like Joe Biden, I also don't believe that it's the right thing to do if people have paid for your concert to kick them out if they're Joe Biden supporters. I don't think that that's the right thing to do. I think that as Americans, we need to be better than that. We do need to treat each other with respect. Now, here's the problem, is that a lot of Joe Biden supporters don't respect or treat Donald Trump supporters with the respect that we deserve. And here's the funny thing about that, is that oftentimes when you look and see what Donald Trump supporters, what we have been right about, you know, we talked about, and the past couple of weeks has really shined the light on the fact that Donald Trump supporters have been right about a number of different things. And it's almost like we have to drag the media along with us. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we've all been saying for a long time that Joe Biden was lacking in mental acuity. I've been saying that for at least a year. New study comes out. This was last couple of days. A new study came out showing how the lockdowns really impacted our kids in school. We've known that for a long time, but we were saying this because this is yet another new study, an exhaustive new study, they say. But when they were locking down the schools, when Dr. Anthony Fauci was insisting on locking down the schools, and anybody who had any other opinion, their careers were ruined and their reputations were disparaged. And Republicans were saying this is the wrong thing to do. Yet they did it anyway. We could talk all day long about things that Republicans and conservatives and talk show hosts have been right about, and eventually the truth did come out. We could talk about how Fauci and many people said that COVID, came from that wet market. And people on the right were saying, you might want to look at the lab. You might want to look at the lab. We were told that we were conspiracy theorists and we were trying to kill people. And we said that, the vaccine mandates were wrong. And that we were saying, better be careful because, you're trying to develop these vaccines and it's called Operation Warp Speed. What could go wrong? Well, we now know that people are having side effects to the vaccines. I mean, the laptop from hell, at least to me, is the biggest. I would say that is the biggest thing that conservatives and Republicans have been right about, where we said that is credible. The New York Post is right. That laptop from hell, that has information on that could literally change the election. And we were told that we were conspiracy theorists. The media sat on it. The media tried to discredit the laptop from hell, and we all know what happened. And it turns out we were right. And so when it comes to whose supporters are smarter, maybe more aware of what's going on, I would definitely say that it is the supporters of Donald Trump. I would say definitely that it is the supporters of conservative values. I would. Now, that doesn't mean that I approve of Wacka Flocka Flame kicking out Joe Biden supporters from his concert like he apparently did last night.
Joe Biden voters to get out.
I mean, I don't think that that's the right thing to do because I don't think that we should treat each other like that. I would not want to be treated like that. And if I went to, I don't know, for example, you picked the concert. If I went to somebody's concert and somebody said, hey, all you Donald Trump supporters get out, which is, by the way, what some of us have been dealing with over the last several years, I didn't like it. I wouldn't like it. Well, it's the same thing. Turnabout is fair play. Anyway, bottom line is, to me, that little audio bite is also indicative of the support that Joe Biden is losing. I mean, the whole Rappers for Trump phenomena has been really interesting. And so that is, again, indicative of the support that Joe Biden is losing within, that community. And I'm not saying that, the only people that like hip hop and rap music are black folks. But what I am saying is that there's a lot of people that do make the correlation between the loss of the support of people like Wacka Flocka Flame and young black males. And we've been talking about this for a long time now, about how Joe Biden is losing the support of the younger black males, the older black folks. I mean, they are sticking with Joe Biden for whatever reason, but you can see it in the polling that Biden is losing support from that community. And that is a very big deal. That is a very big deal. And it's like the entire nation has been red-pilled, and that really has started to happen, especially since the debate. But I'm reasonably certain that people like Wacka Flocka Flame and others have been on the Trump train for a long time. And the rest of that soundbite with Wacka Flocka Flame, where he says we're gonna party with T24 or something to that effect. And so just that is how the last few days have been for the Biden administration and the Biden surrogates. They're just trying to focus on Donald Trump, which is ridiculous because right now the conversation is all about Joe Biden. Now, Scott Jennings is a Republican, and he works over at CNN, and I don't know how much longer he's going to work at CNN, but he was talking about this. He is an analyst, and he was talking about how the last several days, and especially on Tuesday, it was a crazy day for the Biden administration.
This is an amazing day. Number one, the New York Times reporting that he's lapsing in meetings. This is becoming more frequent. Number two, we found out today that a felon and a crack addict is now sitting in on White House senior staff meetings. And number three, the president is now tonight to his own donors blaming a foreign trip that ended 12 days before the debate for his disastrous performance on Thursday. This is what you call a high-speed come apart. The White House is off the rails. The president has effectively admitted tonight that he is not up to both campaigning for president and being president. I don't know where we're going from here, but this has been a momentous day, and I'll be shocked if there aren't more Democrats who come out and say, what are we doing? We are walking into disaster if we stick with this.
I mean, he's absolutely right. And all those things that he talked about, some of these things, it's been such a busy evening that I have even hit on the fact that, yes, Hunter Biden has been hanging out at the White House with Joe Biden. Now, Hunter's always at the White House, but here's the thing, is that he's been attending meetings. No, not drug addict or meetings or Alcoholics Anonymous. No, not that kind of a meeting. He's been attending official meetings with Joe Biden. Hunter. Seriously. That's part of the news cycle today. Apparently, he's been by the president's side since they got back from Camp David, and it actually does sound like Hunter is participating in those meetings and actually dialoguing with senior staffers.
We should note that it's not unusual for Hunter Biden to be at the White House, to be in the residence, to be attending certain White House events, which we have certainly seen time and time again over the last 3.5 years, where we have seen photos of him and where he has appeared in public. It is unusual, according to the people we spoke with, for him to be participating at this level and to have the sort of regularity of some of these contacts and conversations with senior staff. We understand, again, since returning yesterday from Camp David, where they were more huddled as a family, to now as the president has resumed some of his more traditional meetings at the White House with those key advisors.
I mean, aside from the fact that a porn and drug addict is now helping run the country, what about things like security clearances? I mean, I find that whole part of the news cycle today fascinating. I wouldn't trust Hunter Biden as far as I can throw him with classified and sensitive information. You just can't. And we've been talking about all morning long, in the last couple of nights, about the New York Times article where they did write that Biden has been having a lot of issues in meetings, listless, they said, practically falling asleep, they said, in meetings, and he would lose the thread of conversations as well. They say, and this is from the article from the New York Times, the uncomfortable occurrences were not predictable, but seemed more likely when he was in a large crowd or tired after a particularly bruising schedule. And so that is a part of what Scott Jennings was talking about. Also in the news is that Biden actually said at some sort of a fundraiser, probably not the best thing to say at a fundraiser, but he said that he almost fell asleep on the stage because he had made a couple of trips to Europe and then he came back. But the timeline doesn't work because he said, I made a couple of trips to Europe before the debate. But the reality is that he had a whole bunch of days right before that debate at Camp David. He even had a couple of days in his Delaware beach house to rest. So come on. And so Jennings, when he was talking about the really bad date that Joe Biden had, I just played you the audio, he was on a panel on CNN with a guy named Jamal Simmons, who used to work for the vice president. And so listen to what he had to say.
Are we sure Scott wasn't talking about the criminal felon that had the secret documents that he was holding in his bathroom in Mar-a-Lago? Because there was a felon that we haven't talked about tonight.
Oh, please. Yeah, okay, whatever. You know, I heard that and I was like, oh, please. Nobody is talking about that, and I'm air quoting here, that convicted felon stuff. Nobody. Because everybody knows it's BS, number one, and at this point, it's a lame line that doesn't really land, because the polling has shown very few people actually care about the whole convicted felon narrative that the Democrats and the Biden administration is trying to play out. And so Jennings, who was on this panel with this guy, former guy from the Biden administration, Jamal Simmons, they really started to do battle.
Are you comfortable, Jamal? Are you comfortable with Hunter Biden running White House senior staff meetings? Do you think this is good? Do you think this is good?
Why are you yelling at me?
I mean, what an idiot. Why are you yelling at me? Why are you yelling at me? He's yelling at you because you are an idiot. He's yelling at you because Scott Jennings is animated because he understands how ridiculous of a statement you just made. Jamal Simmons, surrogate for the Biden administration, surrogate for Kamala Harris. I mean, honestly, you're getting yelled at because you deserve to get yelled at.
Are you comfortable, Jamal? Are you comfortable with Hunter Biden running White House senior staff meetings? Do you think this is good? Do you think this is good?
Why are you yelling at me? Listen,
come on.
Listen,
I'm asking you. I'm asking you. We're talking about Joe Biden. We're talking about Joe Biden tonight, who is admitting to his own donors, people in your party, that he can't both perform and campaign. And you want to talk about the Mar-a-Lago documents case, which is not going to come to trial before November. Yep. This is the sitting president. You work for him. I want to know, if you were in a senior staff meeting, would you want Hunter Biden looking over your shoulder? That's my question.
Here's what I want to know. I want to know if we've got somebody in the White House who's got the judgment to look out for our freedom, or somebody who wants to take our freedom away.
All right. So I don't believe that Joe Biden has any judgment whatsoever, as a matter of fact. And see, that's what the Democrats are trying to do. They're trying to focus on Donald Trump trying to take away all of those freedoms. And to be candid, really, that is all that they have. And can I ask a question? If Donald Trump was this big threat to everyone's freedoms, wouldn't he have done it in the first 4 years of his presidency? I mean, I believe the first 2 years, he also had the House and the Senate. The Republicans had the majority. And last time I checked, Donald Trump wasn't going after anybody's freedoms. This is what the Democrats are trying to do. They're trying to go after Donald Trump. They're trying to make up all of these accusations that he's going to do this and he's going to do that. And here's the deal. It is simply not true. 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Eric and Gary. This is Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Eight 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. That is where we find Joe in Texas on Red Eye Radio. Joe, thanks for calling in. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I'm a first-time caller, so I'm going to try to make this pretty quick. This whole thing with Joe Biden, I didn't watch the debate. I just watched clips here and there. But I was wondering as to what kind of Joe we were going to get. Was he going to be the juiced-up Joe, or which one? And I was really surprised to see, what we got. And right away, my brothers thinking like, "Wow, this is intentional." They want to go ahead and start making their move to get him out. Basically, he's already served his purpose. So now they're gonna, install somebody else, just like I believe he was installed,
Joe, so here's
that's
what I'd say, Joe, and your cell phone isn't the greatest, but thanks for holding on and thanks for calling in. I'll go ahead and answer your question. So, yeah, that is one of the theories that is out there, is that I think what happened is the Democrats understood, they've got internal polling, whatever's going on, the Democrats realized that Joe Biden was not doing well in the polling at all. They went ahead. Biden had said, anytime, pal, anywhere, anytime to Donald Trump in a debate. So they had no choice. He said that to Howard Stern. They had no choice. The polling was down. They went ahead and had the debate. They did have it early. This was a very early debate. I think it was the earliest debate in history of debates. And I think that, the Democrats were like, if he does not have a good showing, then we are going to have to make a move, and we've got enough time to make a move. The problem is that at this point, they have to convince Jill to convince Joe to step aside. I don't know any way that they can take him off of the ballot because he won the debates, not the debates. He won the primary fair and square. There for the Democrats, although they wouldn't let anybody run against him. So I don't know if you would actually call it fair and square, but whatever. He did win the primary for the Democrats. And so now they're in a bit of a pickle because they've got to figure out a way within the rules to kick Joe Biden off of the ticket, or they need to convince him to step down. I don't believe that Jill Biden will allow Joe Biden to step down. I think that Hunter Biden, who is now, firmly put in place there within the White House, and Hunter is kind of helping run the country, which is scary if you think about it. But Hunter and Jill, they're not going to allow Joe to step aside. They're telling Joe, no, you've got to fight for your job. You've got to stay in the race. So I don't know if he's going anywhere. It's going to be interesting to watch. Thanks for your call.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. Appreciate you listening. 866-907-3339. Let's say hello to Tim calling from New Mexico on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Tim, how are you?
Hi, doing good. 2 points I got to make. One point is, this debate, I have been complaining about it since before Memorial Day. When I first heard of it, I said, why is he doing this debate? Here's why. Here's why I've been complaining about it is, all this stuff that's coming out now would have came out after their conventions. They'd have no time to do nothing for sure. Exactly. Then they'd really be screwed. But he'd let them back in the game. And the other point is, whether it be Michelle Obama or whoever, it's going to be identically the same policy we have now, because who's running the show now? Well, it's basically the Obama crew that are running the show. So tell me one thing, and I'm not a Trump guy, I'm a Cruz guy. But anyway, and a DeSantis guy. But tell me one thing we're going to gain. What's going to be different? I mean, you're still going to be, in another year, we're going to be $37 trillion in debt, about $1.5 trillion annually to serve it. Your inflation is still going to be rolling the way it is, even worse probably. So everything we have now is going to be amplified even worse than what we have now. So what are we going to gain with a Michelle Obama or governor of whatever, Maryland or Michigan?
Maryland Westmore. Yeah, you got
Gavin Newsom. He already got ran over by the Ron DeSantis steamroller last fall. I seen him. He still got caterpillar tracks on his head yet from Ron DeSantis flattening him out, who should have been our nominee. I still say should have been DeSantis. or Larry Elder or Tim Scott, but whatever. But we're not going to gain anything with any of the Democrats. So people, you got to wake up. We are stuck with the lesser of the two evil, and that is all you're going to get. Trump is the lesser of the two evil, and you need to shut up and accept it. That's all there is.
So, Tim, here's what I would say to you is I want Joe Biden to stay as the candidate for the Democrats. I do, because I believe that he is the most beatable. I think there's a lot of political.
He's going to stay in. Okay, the reason why is I think Ukraine. By the way, we just sent another $2.5 billion to them. But Ukraine, China, Iran, they have got too much goods on Biden, so they're going to force. He's going to probably stay in.
Right.
If we have an election. I don't know at this point, but
well, we're going to have an election. I would say to you that, and I don't know if you heard earlier, Tim, but I was talking about how going through some of the polling, most of the candidates that are out there are just behind Joe Biden that are Democrats. So if Biden steps aside, you've got Pete Buttigieg, you've got Kamala Harris, you've got all of these folks. Gavin Newsom is another one. And I think Wes Moore was included in the polling, but they all are just behind Joe Biden compared to Donald Trump. The only person that could possibly beat Donald Trump is Michelle Obama. So there is a lot of intrigue there.
You're not going to gain nothing with her. You're going to be exactly the same policies you have now.
No, I understand. I understand that. I think what we need to do is we need to beat whoever the Democrat is. Now, you said that you're not a big Donald Trump fan. You're more of a DeSantis guy. You like Ted Cruz. I'm with you on Ted Cruz. I was a big Ted Cruz fan. But I will also say that Donald Trump did a lot of good. And I'm not going to be a Trump apologist, whatever. But what I would say to you is that you say it's the lesser of two evils. That's all fine, well, and good. But I hope that you vote anyway. And that's what I've been telling all of my conservative friends, all of my Republican friends who may not necessarily be the biggest fans of Donald Trump, and they may not go out and vote because they don't like him for whatever reason. Maybe they don't like the fact that he spent a lot of money when he was in office. Maybe they don't like the fact that, he developed the vaccines that were eventually mandated by Joe Biden. They didn't like the tweets that he sent out. They didn't like the language that he sent out, whatever it is. To me, even if you don't like Donald Trump, you didn't like his policies, you didn't like his language, whatever, you still have to go out and vote. And there's a lot of reasons why you need to go out and vote, because if there are some hijinks and shenanigans that could happen during the election in November, what we need is the most absolutely overwhelming victory that nobody can come out and say, well, there was cheating or whatever it is. And we need to be beyond that scale. We need to be completely beyond the opportunity for the Democrats to cheat or for anyone to say that we cheated. I mean, that's a pretty big deal, I would say. And I hope that, people who are Republicans and conservatives, but you're not a big fan of Donald Trump, I hope that you realize that even if you're not a fan of Donald Trump, you need to go out and you do need to vote for a lot of different reasons, including the economy and inflation. That's a very big deal, too.
I feel like I'm going to be sick. I just, looked through my Walmart history, and I found this, Walmart order from 2 years ago for the whole month worth of groceries. 45 items cost $126. A whole month of groceries just for me, basically. But I did notice this reorder all button, and I wanted to see how much it would cost now. Now, this order of 45 items for 1 month would have cost $414.
Wow.
That is 4 times more. How? What?
Yeah. I found that on TikTok, and the guy's got a great point. And that's why I'm sitting here and I'm saying to you that even if you're not a Donald Trump supporter, let's not forget that Joe Biden is the guy that brought us 9.3% inflation. And I do understand that inflation has gone down, and I totally get that. But at the same time, you still have to realize that the price of things still really expensive. And so I'm going to, if my wife wasn't asleep right now, I would text her and ask her to do the same thing. How much, if you've got that reorder button and you can go back, 2 years, it'd be even better if it was 3 years, but, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, how much would your exact shopping list cost from 3 years ago and today? This guy, I think he said it was like $150 more. And that's a lot of money when you start multiplying it, by each and every day that you go to the grocery store and do your shopping. But you've got the economy. You've got the border. You've got crime in the streets. You've got all of the money that we're giving to Ukraine. We have the funding of Iran. They, of course, then go after our friends Israel. And so we talk about all of these things all the time in talk radio. And I realize that right now the main focus has been on Joe Biden and whether or not he should be running for re-election and whether or not he should actually be running the country. Because frankly, I don't even think that he should be running the country. But when you talk about the price of things, when you talk about the border, when you talk about Iran and how the sanctions that Donald Trump put in place, and then here comes Joe Biden basically waiving those sanctions for Iran, then they start funding Hamas. Now they're also, of course, they've always funded Hezbollah as well. Hezbollah has been going after Israel big time. And in the news last week, they were talking about how there's going to be a massive bloody war between Israel and Hezbollah. And then if Israel does start to go on the offense against Hezbollah, which is, of course, another Iranian-backed, Iranian-funded terrorist group out of Lebanon, then Iran is going to jump into the war as well. So we are looking at, because of Joe Biden's weakness, a major, and I mean a major conflict in the Middle East. And people are saying that it is going to be really bloody and it's going to be long. And one of the things that, we always talk about is the fact that we have a very weak commander-in-chief. And when other nations, when other foreign leaders see that our nation has a weak leader, then they use those opportunities to strike. I mean, the failed pullout of Afghanistan. We all know that right after that was when Vladimir Putin was emboldened to go into Ukraine. The reason he did that was because Joe Biden, in that pullout of Afghanistan, clearly he was weakened. He is a feeble, weak leader. The American people know that, and our enemies know it as well. Wesley Hunt is a former military guy, and now he is a U.S. congressman out of Texas. And he was talking on a podcast about just that, the foreign policy of Donald Trump that was based on strength versus the weakness of Joe Biden. Here's part of what he said.
I'll give you my favorite President Trump story. This is my number one favorite of all time. When we were negotiating with the Taliban, while President Trump was still the president, President Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan, but he wanted a conditions-based withdrawal. Mm-hmm. Meaning that you do what we tell you to do, and then we will start pulling troops back slowly as long as you abide by our rules. It's President Trump and Mike Pompeo, and they are talking to Taliban leadership in the room, and they had one translator in the room. President Trump looked at the Taliban leader and said this: I want to leave Afghanistan, but it's going to be a conditions-based withdrawal. And translator translated. And he said, if you harm a hair on a single American, I'm going to kill you. And the translator goes, and Trump goes, tell him that.
Yes.
Tell him what I said. Reached in his pocket, pulled out a satellite photo of the leader of the Taliban's home and handed it to him.
Shut up.
Got up and walked out the room.
Sure did.
Do you know for 18 months not a single American was killed in Afghanistan?
Sure did.
That's the definition of strength.
That is the definition of strength. That's a great story about Donald Trump on his planned pullout of Afghanistan. Now, remember, again, Biden is known for his failed pullout of Afghanistan. The reason it failed is because he didn't follow Donald Trump's agenda or his plan related to that pullout. Biden comes in and he announces the date that they were going to leave, September 11th of 2021, which was 20 years after 9/11 of 2001, obviously. So basically what Biden did is he announced to our enemies what our plans were, and then he just pulled everyone out. And he pulled everyone out as the Taliban began rampaging across Afghanistan. So we'd pull out our guys, and Afghanistan was slowly but surely taken over by the Taliban. And so we leave a town, we leave a city, and the Taliban just takes over. And it was a bloody takeover, leaving our friends in the region to die, the ones that helped us for 20 years. Now, remember the chaos and, of course, the 13 service members who were killed at that airport checkpoint. How crazy that was? Remember how horrific it was? People trying to escape and hanging onto airplanes as those airplanes took off, falling from the airplanes. That's how desperate they were. And then remember when Biden said there would be no scenes of final helicopters leaving chaos behind, like we saw in Vietnam. Well, that did happen, and that was all brought to you by the Biden administration. And then they brought in thousands of Afghanistan people who nobody really knows if they were vetted or not. Most people say that they were not vetted. So that's the difference between Donald Trump and peace through strength and Joe Biden, chaos through weakness. Putin was emboldened to go into Ukraine after all of that. President Xi starts messing with Taiwan. Then we, of course, have the open borders. Biden lifts the sanctions on Iran, of course. Just a mess with foreign policy. So when Donald Trump was in office, we had strength. People thought that Donald Trump would send us careening into World War III. Remember all of that? But really, it was that concept of peace through strength that always keeps your enemy guessing. Got a lot more straight ahead. This is Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Thanks for listening to Red Eye Radio. The phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. My name is Dan Mandis. You can find out more about me on the socials. At Dan Mandis Show is where you can find me on both Twitter and Facebook. I host a morning show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN in Nashville, Tennessee. And you can always listen to that at 997WTN.com. We also, if you like to watch radio shows, and believe it or not, there's people that like to watch radio shows, okay. Well, we are also on Facebook, and we're on YouTube, and we are also, again, on the website I just mentioned, 997WTN.com. Got a lot more straight ahead. The phone number, again, 866-90-RED-EYE. Got a lot more straight ahead on Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Gary and Eric will return Sunday night, Monday morning. I don't know about you, but I'm a conservative, and I realize that there's people that are not conservative that listen to this program. But I am going to tell you that as a conservative myself, I am having fun watching the left just completely lose their ever-loving minds. I am. And I don't know why, but it's almost like sport now, where I'm checking Twitter feeds, I'm checking Instagram feeds, and I'm looking for the plaintive howl of Democrats and progressives that are out there complaining about what is going on with Joe Biden. And so I ran across this audio bite on Twitter. This is none other than Rosie O'Donnell.
Need them. Listen, I'm depressed myself, but I'm trying to tell you out there, if you are, you got to hold on. We've survived all the depressing days so far. We'll survive this one. Reach out for your friends for help.
Wow.
Tell the people that you love how you feel. And know that this country, I believe, is going to right itself and oust him for good in November. And boy, I pray. That's all I got to say. TikTok, you don't stop.
TikTok, you don't stop. There you go. TikTok, you don't stop. Rosie O'Donnell. Of course, obviously, she's talking about Donald Trump and not Joe Biden. The left, by the way, has received some really, really bad news. You know, it's interesting. Whenever I do this program, people manage to find me in any way possible. And you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. I'm rarely on that. I'm barely on TikTok, and I am on Facebook. You can send me messages there. A guy actually sent me an email last night, when I was doing this program, and I totally missed it, but I saw it this morning, and he actually asked if he had a request. And, you know, as radio talk show hosts, we don't actually get requests all that much, but I did get a request if I could replay the audio from Joy Reid. And so I figured if I'm going to play the audio of a definitely losing her mind Rosie O'Donnell, I would also revisit Joy Reid and the absolutely insane things that she said over the last couple of days, where she basically gives some sort of an intimation that she'll be, I don't know, if Donald Trump wins the election, she's going to go camp out at Best Western and eat all of her meals at Waffle House. I'm still trying to figure this whole thing out.
This election is no longer about the old guy that's in the White House now. Like, you know, all the op-ed pages and the New York Times can run around and opine about, you know, what Joe Biden should do. And, you know, y'all have fun with that. Enjoy yourselves, intellectual thought leaders. I no longer care. Doesn't matter to me anymore. It's above me now. It's above me now. There's a Waffle House next door. There's a Best Western next door as well.
Yeah, I still don't know what that means. It's been 24 hours, and I still am confused at that one.
It's above me now. It's above Joe Biden now. Don't care about Joe Biden's age, infirmity, that he shuffled when he walked. I don't care. Donald John Trump cannot be allowed back into the White House. You put him in the White House, combined with this court and a Republican House and Senate, we're done, y'all. Sure. All the rights that were won in the 20th century, the hard-earned rights of women, laborers, workers, the rights of children. Remember, child labor used to be legal. The rights of black folks, forget that. The rights of non-white immigrants, forget that. All of the 20th, they are trying to repeal the entire 20th century, and they're doing it fast. Between them and these crazy Republican governors, they are repealing the American century, the 20th century, because they don't like it and they want back the 19th century. The century when super rich white men, unchecked and untaxed, amassed great wealth, passed it down with no taxation to their descendants and pretended that they had earned it on their own, that they were just masters of the universe. They want that era back. They think that the 20th century was an abomination and they are dismantling it. They're coming for every single one of our rights. They're not done.
So that is only part of what Joy Reid had to say. She's clearly lost her mind. And as I said yesterday, somebody may want to do a welfare check on Joy Reid.
You have this court, plus Trump, plus the House, plus the Senate, plus all these states. Y'all better vote for your lives in November. I'm gone. Y'all be good. And God, good luck and God bless. For real, for real.
For real, for real. Bye, Felicia. New York Post headline, Biden falls behind Trump in key swing states, and safe areas are now in play after that disastrous debate this came down last night. Again, this is a leaked Democrat poll, and this is a big deal. President Biden has lost ground to Donald Trump in more than a dozen battleground states or districts after his disastrous debate performance last week, according to polling conducted by a Democrat-affiliated nonprofit. The data from Open Labs, reported by Puck News, indicates that if the election were held today, the 81-year-old Biden would not only lose all 7 of the swing states thought to hold the key to the White House in 2024, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, but also states he won convincingly 4 years ago. I mean, even before the debate, Virginia was in play. Minnesota was in play. They say those include New Hampshire, which last voted Republican in the year 2000, Virginia, which I just mentioned, which Biden won by 10 points in 2020, and New Mexico, which has gone Democrat in 7 of the last 8 presidential elections. If that data does prove to be correct on November 5th, Donald Trump, 78 years old, would become the 47th president in an electoral college landslide. You know what that landslide would be? 335 to 203. If the election were held today, the electoral college landslide would be Donald Trump defeating Joe Biden 335 to 203. And this is from a Democrat poll taker. Now, here's part of what I wonder is going on, because you know that the Democrats definitely want Joe Biden to drop out. I mean, that is obvious. You've got, Nancy Pelosi and some of these other folks that are out there, basically saying, yeah, Joe Biden had a tough night on debate night, but he's still our man. But behind the scenes, they know that this is going on. Van Jones and others, if you have been listening the last couple of nights, Van Jones even came out and said, we have to watch the polling. We need to see the polling, because if what we see and what we expect to see is the battleground states start to slide for Joe Biden and start to increase for Donald Trump, then we need to make a move, and we need to make a move quick, they say. In the 14 battlegrounds spotlighted by Open Labs, which also included Colorado, Maine, Minnesota, Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, Biden lost between 1.7 and 2.4% to Donald Trump compared to the Democrats' pre-debate numbers. And again, it also included Colorado, Maine, Minnesota, Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. Biden is losing anywhere between 1.7 and 2.4%. And so this is turning now into a nightmare for the Democrats. The memo also reported that 40% of voters who backed Joe Biden in 2020 believe that he should drop out, while 55% of swing voters want him off the Democratic ticket, and just 29% say that he should stay on. The polling memo was sent out on Sunday as Democrats grappled with the scope of Biden's performance, and the White House tried to solidly back his run for the presidency. But here's the deal. The White House, again, as they try to solidify folks backing the president, it's not working. One of the things that they're saying is that if Joe Biden decides to step down, it'll be at the Democrat convention, and they'll say that he will still be the focal point of the convention. But it would be a way that they would show their appreciation for him to step aside. One former Democrat, Congressman Tim Ryan of Ohio, took to the pages of Newsweek with a call for the party to make Vice President Kamala Harris the nominee. I don't think that's going to do much better for the Democrats. I don't. Now, would she be able to put a semi-coherent sentence together? Maybe she could. But I don't think that she would beat Donald Trump. I don't. And that is, and I know that we talk about it all the time, that is the biggest problem right now that the Democrats have. They got several problems. They've got Joe Biden at the top of the ticket, losing his mind, clearly. They've got Kamala Harris as the vice president. And if Joe goes down, well, then what do you do with Kamala Harris? Because you know that she's not going to do well. And so what do you do? Where do you go with all of this? Some people say, well, send Kamala Harris over to the Supreme Court. Well, that's going to be a little hard because there's no guarantee that she would actually be confirmed to the Supreme Court. And she knows that, so she's not going to just willy-nilly give up her political career to go beyond possibly the Supreme Court. No, she wants to be president. She wants to be the first black female president. That's what Kamala Harris wants. And if she has to, get in by an ailing and failing Joe Biden stepping down, then so be it. But that's what she wants. She wants to be the first. And that is why the Democrats are in such a tough place right now, because Kamala Harris won't get the hell out of the way. By the way, did you see the news that Gavin Newsom is actually, believe it or not, he is flying now to Washington, D.C. to be at the side of Joe Biden. Have you also noticed, by the way, where is Robert De Niro? He's awfully quiet these days. You remember when Robert De Niro, he went out and he was in front of the courthouse when Donald Trump was going through the hush money trial. And De Niro was out there, and he had all kinds of nasty things to say about Donald Trump. He is a big-time Joe Biden supporter. Where is he now? Where is George Clooney? Where is Julia Roberts? Where are all of these Hollywood leftists now that their candidate, the one that they've been campaigning for, talking about, raising money for, tweeting about and all this, doing interviews and all this, where are they now? They've been awfully quiet. I don't know. Inquiring minds want to know. This is Pete in Connecticut on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Pete, how are you?
Hey, good morning. Speaking of celebrities, the old expression, shut up and sing. Let me tell you what these useless, political-minded celebrities have done with me. Number one, I used to love Barbara Streisand. Forget it. I can't even listen to her music anymore. Cher, Sonny and Cher back in the good old days.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my, what would Sonny be saying right now? Because he was a diehard conservative. But forget it. I have my playlist, and a Cher song comes up, which I used to love, and I turn it up. I turn it off now.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to be a diehard Barry Manilow fan from day one, from 1974. Okay?
Yeah.
He's smart. He doesn't say anything. Guess what he does? He sings. I love it. I mean, he may have come out,
right,
married to a guy or whatever. But again, it is what it is. Okay, I guess I've changed a little bit through my maturity and the fact that I love Barry. Barry's the guy. Okay, but he knows enough to keep his mouth shut, other than to sing.
Yep.
And this AOC character. Come on, she's an ex-bartender, and she's gonna put in paperwork for impeachment for the Supreme
for the six,
Court
yeah.
judge.
Oh, you know what? AOC is absolutely ridiculous. And Pete, I appreciate the call. By the way, a musical recommendation. You mentioned that you like Barry Manilow. You mentioned that you at one time liked Barbara Streisand and Cher. Go find Metallica. I think you might really like them. It's, let's see here. Matt is calling from Tennessee on Red Eye Radio. Matt, go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Dan. Long time listening to you. And I'm going to tell you, I think you're one of the hardest working dudes in radio, dude.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You're on here a lot of hours. I've been listening to you over the years. But anyway, my thing is, when Trump was in office, I was doing pretty good financially. Got a family of 4, and with inflation and stuff, I'm a young guy. I've managed to work myself up. I was trying to buy a home, and then when all the inflation came in, I'm pretty much just hurting financially. My question is Trump going to be able to get in there and do something with the inflation rates and interest rates and different things within the 4 years? Is it something that he's going to be able to do?
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, Matt, and you're in Tennessee. Did you see the story? $200,000 is now needed for down payment if you want to buy a home in Nashville. And so you're right. Part of the problem with wanting to buy a home these days is interest rates. Interest rates are really high. And here's the deal, because you bring up a very valid question, and that is, how is Donald Trump going to get the economy back in order? These things are not, the economy isn't train wrecked overnight, and it's not going to be able to get fixed overnight. But you know what? When Donald Trump says that he's got a plan in place, do I believe that he'll be able to do it? I believe that he will be able to do it. One of the things that he talks about as far as the economy goes is cutting regulations. And we know that he cut a lot of regulations during his first term in office. And so that's number one. Number two, and it's, you know, all of the talking points that Donald Trump has, all of the greatest hits. He wants to have more goods made in America, and there's a lot of debate as to whether or not that would actually help or hurt our economy. But number three is he wants to really embrace even more domestic oil production. So those are three big things that Donald Trump has talked about wanting to do that would help the economy. But again, it just is going to take some time. 866-90 Red Eye. We'll return next.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at JJ Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on speed and space management. In order to manage speed, you need to understand the 4 factors involved in stopping a vehicle. Perception distance is the distance a vehicle travels from the time you see a hazard until your brain recognizes it. The perception time for an alert driver is approximately 3/4 of a second. Reaction distance is the distance a vehicle travels from the time your brain tells your foot to move from the accelerator until your foot hits the brake pedal. The average driver has a reaction time of 3/4 of a second. Brake lag distance also needs to be taken into account. When operating a vehicle with air brakes, it takes about half a second for the mechanical operation to take place. Finally, braking distance is the distance it takes a vehicle to stop once the brakes are applied. Braking distance is affected by the weight, length, and speed of the vehicle, as well as road condition. This tip was brought to you by JJ Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
$866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, and that is where we find Steve calling from Wisconsin. Hey, Steve, how are you?
Well, thank you, Dan. Yeah, I was watching the debate, and I'm aghast that a man could be considered to hold a nuclear football. And it reminds me of Yeltsin for Russia when he was an alcoholic. It's just ridiculous. And if I was Donald Trump, I would consider not debating him again, and I would make the argument, look, on the first debate, I'd say this is a waste of time to even try to legitimize and defend the presidency of Biden. He's destroying our country. Now, all the more so, I don't want to take part in this charade of elderly abuse. And if I could also make a comment on, like, George Clooney's on those types.
Real quick.
They're bimbos. They're bimbos. They don't think.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye. All right, Steve, Steve is calling from Wisconsin. We held him over the break. Steve, you were talking about bimbo celebrities, and I'll take those calls any day of the week. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I even mentioned this. I have a blog, and I said then that George Clooney and those types are bimbos. And it's because they haven't given the matter thought. They've gotten half of the story, and they ran with it, but they haven't examined the whole issue. For example, they see who's popular. They want to be popular with the public, so they get on that train. And I wanted to mention how Wisconsin has suddenly gone from semi-red to blue, and California the same way. It used to be a red state. And I have to take some responsibility for that. I told you I have a blog, and I'm very influential. And I was in those two states and I swayed a lot of people's opinions because I was criticizing from the 80s some corrupt Republicans, and now they've all gone on the bandwagon to get away from these Republicans. But the man that they were trying to honor, me, completely is on Trump's side.
In other news, I wanted to play this audio anyway. This is Maxwell Frost. Joe Biden is apparently out there, and he's talking about where he fell asleep. He apparently told a bunch of folks at a fundraiser that he actually fell asleep or almost fell asleep when he was on stage, and he's blaming the travel, the worldwide travel. This is what he had to say.
Apparently, the president apologized to everyone in the room, saying this is not an excuse, but it is an explanation. And he blamed the extensive foreign travel that he did in the lead up to the CNN debate for his poor performance. Just a reminder for everyone, he did go to France for the D-Day anniversary, and then he turned right back around and went to Italy for the G7 summit. And he told the room, I didn't listen to my staff. So the suggestion there being his staff did not think this was a good idea. And then he apparently said, I almost fell asleep on stage. I just want to unpack this new explanation for a second, as the explanation for why his debate performance was so bad. I find it a little bit puzzling, and frankly, I'm not sure that a lot of people are going to find this reassuring. If anything, some folks might hear this and be even more concerned. Yes, there were 2 foreign trips in the lead up to the June 27th CNN debate, but he returned from Italy on June 15th. The debate, again, was on June 27th. So we're talking about roughly 12 days in between when he was back in the States. And remember, a part of those 12 days, about a full week, he actually spent with his advisors at Camp David for the sole purpose of really focusing on debate prep. So why is the president falling asleep on the debate stage at the hours of 9 p.m. to 10:30?
Yeah, and here's the other thing, is that they say that the president's schedule when he was up at Camp David, they talk about how he didn't start work until like 11 o'clock in the morning. And then it was, it could be some long middays, and then he would be down for the count a little bit after 6 or so. And so it's clear there's a number of things going on. Number one is the president is trying to make excuses, and clearly he's not convincing the American people. He's not convincing the American people at all. He's certainly not convincing the Democrats. A guy by the name of Maxwell Frost, he is a congressman, and he was on CNN, and they asked him about what they just reported. I just played you the audio. They asked him about the fact that Biden told a bunch of folks at a fundraiser that he almost fell asleep on stage. He's blaming it on his worldwide travel. However, that travel ended, 12 days? 12 days before the debate. So it doesn't seem to me like it's a good excuse. I want to play this audio. Here it is. I got the wrong thing up.
30.
And this is what the president, stand by, and here we go.
Biden had just told donors that he nearly fell asleep on stage during Thursday's debate because of all of his international travel. Does that raise any concerns for you?
Yeah, well, I just read about that like everybody else. I know this is, hearsay or could have been paraphrased from people in the room, so unsure exactly what he said. But, the president does do a lot of travel. I mean, he was traveling, crisscrossing the entire world, then going right to Camp David, obviously prior to the debate. So we want to hear more about what he said.
Yeah, in other words, he's just trying to not take it very seriously. But see, here's the deal, is that the president is not convincing anybody. And I know that there's a lot of people that hear that the president is telling folks at a fundraiser that he almost fell asleep on stage as he tries to blame that worldwide travel that ended 12 days before the debate. Nobody's buying it. Nobody is buying it. And you just heard that Maxwell Frost, he is a Democrat. He's a congressperson. There's this headline: Joe Biden faces a mutiny as 25 Democrats prepare to call for the ailing president, 81, to step aside. after his disastrous debate against Donald Trump, as one is warning a chilling warning. And we'll tell you about that coming up here on Red Eye Radio. The phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Eric and Gary. This is Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
$866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. All right, so the headline is that the Democrats are en masse, it looks like, out of the House. They're going to call for the president to resign, to step down. The headline is Biden faces mutiny. As 25 Democrats prepare to call for ailing President 81 to step aside after that disastrous debate, one is warning the dam has broken. At least 25 Democrat members of Congress are set to call on Joe Biden to drop out of the presidential race in the coming days, while a pair of senators have distanced themselves from the ailing president. The Democrat revolt in the House was expected to take place if Biden seems shaky in the coming days. As one Democrat aide warned, again, the dam is broken. They do talk about Joe Manchin in the Senate. It was revealed that the centrist Manchin needed to be pulled back from the brink as he prepared to become the first Biden ally to call for him to quit on one of these Sunday news shows. Nobody wants to be the first one to knife Julius Caesar, a party insider said about Manchin's predicament. Tammy Baldwin, a senator who faces re-election in Wisconsin, suddenly announced that she will not be joining Joe Biden on stage as he campaigns in her hometown of Madison on Friday. The Democratic disses came on a whirlwind day in D.C. as not one, not two, but three House members shocked the party by either telling Biden to drop out or stating he's already lost the election to Donald Trump. Apparently what happened, and then I'm going to get to your calls, but apparently what happened is there was a big meeting with a bunch of Democrats, and Simon Atiba tweeted this out. Breaking: House Democrats are in revolt. Their meeting just developed into a grievance session about President Joe Biden exposing growing frustration in Congress. Members derisively called Biden the donkey in the room, with Representative Lloyd Doggett, a Democrat out of Texas, urging Joe Biden to withdraw from the race, some demanding a change in campaign advisors, others wanting him to step aside. Despite House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries' public support, Biden has not contacted him. Democratic leadership is not stopping the public criticism. So really interesting. And that is shocking, too, by the way. I mean, wouldn't you think that Biden, or at least folks on his team, would reach out to, at the very least, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, but apparently not. The phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE. That's where we find Tom in Toronto, listening to the mighty WJR in Detroit. Tom, thanks for calling in. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Like, the thing that's shocking is, where have these Democrats been for the last 2 years? I mean, we've all seen it. Yep. Everybody's seen what's going on there. All the Republicans are saying, look at them. There's something the matter with them. And then all the Democrats like KGP are going, never better, right? You know, we can't keep up with him. That was a good one. We just can't keep up with him, you know, when he's, you know. I mean, we've all seen it. So now, I mean, all these people, they've been gaslighting and lying to us for the last 2 years. The whole Democrat Party, I mean, not just one or two. I mean, they all knew. Everybody knows. So now their seats are in jeopardy. We've seen it. I mean, it's, you know, now it's worldwide because he was out there. And now they're worried about their own seats. So here it comes. So I say the chickens that come home to roost, and it looks good on all of them. I hope Trump just gets there, just wipes them all out this fall. I mean, we're all big Trump supporters up here in Canada, by the way.
Oh, okay, very good. Well, thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it. And you're right, Tom. On many levels, you're right. Number one is you do have these Democrats up for re-election. As I explained this actually earlier in the show, one of the big issues that they have, they're worried that Joe Biden, because there's not a lot of excitement for the president, that people simply are not going to turn out. That is going to be a drag on the down ballot races, i.e. the House of Representatives. And you're right. I mean, we've been talking about this for years. We've been talking about Joe Biden. And also, as we all know that his brain has been diminishing, let's also not forget the fact that while the talk right now is about his mental acuity, the reality is that Joe Biden on his sharpest day, his policies simply suck. Let's not forget about the open border. Let's not forget about inflation. Let's not forget about interest rates. Let's not forget about the spike in crime. Let's not forget about all of the migrant crime from Joe Biden's migrants that he has allowed to come across our southern border. Let's also not forget about the billions of dollars that he's sending Ukraine in a war that he emboldened from the failed pullout of Afghanistan, emboldening Vladimir Putin to go into Ukraine. So let's also not forget about those failed policies. And I appreciate the call. This is Bill, and he is calling from New Jersey on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Bill, how are you?
Hey, Dan, I love you. I love your show, man. Great
Thank you.
show.
I appreciate it.
I live in New Jersey, and the ads touted Biden's progressive agenda, but they disappeared after the debate. And even before the debate, I couldn't see any positives in his reign. What is his strategy now?
I think there's a couple of things going on. Well, there is a strategy. The strategy is they're going to get him in front of, and I talked about this earlier, they're going to get him in front of an interview. And it's so funny. On my local show in Nashville, Tennessee, I predicted this. I said, you watch. They're going to go to George Stephanopoulos, and this is going to be the big Joe Biden post-debate interview. It's not going to be live, and it's going to be with a Clinton operative, George Stephanopoulos, who is pretending to be a news anchor. And I guarantee you that they're going to handle Joe Biden with kid gloves. So, number one, that is the strategy. Number two, I would be willing to bet, Bill in New Jersey, that what they're doing is they're saving their money, because if Biden drops out, then they need to save that money and use it for whoever the next candidate is. It could be Michelle Obama. It could be Gavin Newsom. It could be Wes Moore. Who knows? This is Larry calling from Pennsylvania on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Larry, go ahead.
Hi. Just a couple of quick points, if I may. First point is that the new polling that just came out yesterday showed Harris versus Trump head-to-head, only a 2-point spread. I believe it was 45 to 47.
Okay. I haven't seen that. When the polling that I saw, there was 1 point between them. Trump was up by 1 point. Okay, but agreed. Go ahead. What's next? We're running out of time.
Second point, just like Democrats ace in the hole if things really go south for them, they're going to switch out VP Harris and put Barack Obama in as vice president, and he can be elected as a vice president because he wouldn't be elected as a third term, and have Biden and
I'm not
Obama
sure.
run.
I'm not sure if they can do that. Go ahead.
Well, legally, yes, they can. Like I said, because the Constitution says you can only be elected to 2 terms.
Right.
But if he were elected as a vice president, and then after the election takes place and Biden steps aside, he can run then as president.
All right, I appreciate. I'm not sure if that's true. Listen, it might be. I have not seen or heard that anywhere. So to the Google machine I go. Appreciate you listening to Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.